Good morning. It's great to be here at ESUG again. Something different you'll see this year is I'm wearing shorts. That doesn't usually happen. In fact, it was so warm on Monday, I took off all my clothes, opened the windows. It's fine for me, but everybody else on the train seemed to know it. I'm going to talk about what's going on at GemStone, GemTalk. Starting first with just a quick review of the company for those of you here that don't know us. And from other years, I have the wide variety of slide animations included. Always a crowd favorite. So GemStone, GemTalk has been in continuous operation now for 37 years, since '82. Started as Servio Logic back in the day. First version of GemStone shipped in '86. In '95, we renamed from Servio to GemStone. Then we got bought by a company called Brocat in 2000, divested in 2001, acquired by VMware in 2010, and spun off in 2013. It's been a long road, but me and most of the core people have stayed throughout. So, quick review of our customers. We have a few verticals that we're in. Container shipping vertical is probably our largest. These guys have the largest GemStone database in the world that we know about 13 billion objects, 2.5 terabytes of data, running their shipping business 24/7. They're based in Shanghai. This is our largest customer, and about 20% of the world's shipping containers flow through a GemStone, Smallalk, and VisualWorks system. I told you. Banking is also a very important vertical for us. We have customers all over the world here, South Africa, JP Morgan Chase being our largest, UBS in Zurich, and a company called ICE down in Atlanta. Also manufacturing. TI has been a customer for us for a very long time, since '91. HTS has people here. Yep, there's Bob. And H.B. Fuller manufactures chemicals in the Midwest. Utilities, we have a very large customer in Florida called Florida Power and Light, where if there's a hurricane storm and you call in to say your power's out, the ticket gets entered into a GemStone system and routed to the appropriate repair crews so they can turn your power back on. In telecom, there's an application called Condus, which has been resold by Siemens Austria to various telcos in the world. One of the largest is Telecom Argentina, down in Buenos Aires. This is our telco vertical. Also some government. There are systems in the Canadian government to do border security running on GemStone. The Norwegian government uses our systems to process visas to enter Norway. And the Dutch Agricultural Institute collects agricultural data from all over Holland and inputs it into a GemStone system. These are our major customers. We also have a lot of partners, many of whom are in the room. In the community, we sponsor everything we can in Smallalk, Faro Consortium. We're an industrial member, ESUG sponsor, of course, FAST down in Argentina every year. And Camp Smallalk's, the next one coming up is in Portland in October. Hope you can make it. It's a nice time to be in the Northwest. It hasn't started raining yet usually by then, so it's very pleasant. This year we have 4 people from GemTalk at ESUG, and it's kind of the usual four, myself, Martin, James, and Dale. This afternoon, we're going to try to have a birds of a feather in the courtyard right back here after Dale's talk at Room B. That winds up at 4:30, so if you want to come, just walk back here. We'll start around 4:45 or so and talk about all things GemStone and answer your detailed questions that I may not have time to get into here. We hired a new person this year, and he's a pretty young guy, actually, so I kind of call this GemTalk the next generation. Some people here may know of him or heard of him. I think he came out of Labware, but he wrote the best killer cover letter I've ever seen to get into a Smalltalk company. I'll let you read it there, but my favorite line is, "In just a few days, I fell in love," at the bottom. It's not that common to see a young person with a traditional comp sci education kind of pick up Smalltalk and immediately drink the Kool-Aid. But Kurt did, and he's worked out very well. He's a great hire for us. So we may bring him over next year. Okay, part 2 is the Lightning tutorial in GemStone. How many here have a good feel for what GemStone is? Show of hands. Okay. How many have actually used it? Excellent. So for those who haven't, I'll just do a quick tutorial here on what it is and why it's different and why you might be interested in it. GemStone is really a solution to the limitations of traditional image-based Smalltalk, where you have an object space limited to one VM, you have an object space on one host, it's limited typically by memory, and object changes since the last image save are lost if the VM exits or crashes. Excuse me. It's also a solution to the OR mapping problem, where to store objects in a relational database, you have to kind of take the car apart and put it in the garage. I borrowed that analogy from Bob because I think it's excellent. Where GemStone, you just put the car in the garage and shut the door. You don't disassemble the objects and put it in rows and columns. So we don't have rows, columns, foreign keys, joins. We have none of that. Objects are stored as objects on the disk, intact. I like to say it's the original NoSQL database before NoSQL was cool. So in GemStone, you can have thousands of VMs on thousands of machines, and we literally have customers that do this. The object space is disk limited, not memory limited. You have ACID transactions, which are kind of the gold standard in the database world, atomic, consistent, isolated, and durable. And once you commit a transaction, the object is there for all time until it's deleted. You don't have to worry about the machine crashing or the power going out or whatever. Scalability, as I showed on the slide with CostCon, gets into the billions of objects, thousands of users, thousands of machines, terabytes of data. We also have concurrency, so you have multiple user sessions looking and sharing at the same set of objects. Concurrency can be done either pessimistically with locks or optimistically with reduced conflict collections. And we have shared and private namespaces for visibility of objects and classes. We have object level security, so you can control who has rights to read, write, or even see objects. We have login security. You have to log into GemStone like you would a database. New in the latest version, we also have X509 certificate-based login. So you can log in with a cert and a private key. We also have restricted operations controlled by privileges, garbage collection, system control, etc. And it's all Smalltalk all the time. There's no primitive types or anything. GemStone Smalltalk is a dialect of Smalltalk. Everything is an object. We have support for very large collections and indexes on those collections using B trees. The main two types of searches are equality searches, where you're searching based on an equal, or an identity search based on a double equal. a couple of Smallalk examples there. Another thing about GemStone is it tends to be client or GUI agnostic. We will talk to anybody else's Smallalk that we can. You see the long list here: VisualWorks, VA, Faro, something called Jade and Jade. I'll talk about it in a minute. GT for GemStone. We also try to be language agnostic. We have interfaces to other languages, C and C++, and Java. And we also will pipe data out to a relational database if necessary. Oracle and Sybase being the main two. In terms of platforms we run on, most of our customers these days run on Linux. We also run on Apple, Solaris, and AIX for the object server. The clients are all the above, plus Microsoft Windows and even Raspberry Pi. Martin talked yesterday about GBS, GemBuilder for Smallalk. Our current support is up to VisualWorks 8.3.2 and VA 9.1. I mentioned briefly Jade. Jade is an open source GemStone GUI client framework written in Dolphin Smallalk by James Foster. It's very nice. We have customers that only do development with Jade. Typically small teams, but it works quite well. And James is very active in maintaining it. One of the only catches is it's Windows only, because Dolphin is Windows only. Ooh, this is the Jade system browser. Looks like a browser. And then about a year ago, we started on a project we're calling Jadeite, which is kind of the son of Jade for a customer. And it basically has native integration with a project called Rowan, which is a new package manager Dale's working on, and Git as the source code repository. So Jadeite is out there. It's a little specialized right now for the customer who wrote it for, but it is up on GitHub, and we'll be hearing more about that later. Keep getting better. Licensing, we have free community editions for any usage for anybody that wants to run it. In terms of commercial customers, we offer perpetual or subscription, and also value-added reseller licenses where you build an app and sell it, or have users on it and pay us a commission. And this is our licensing chart in terms of what you get for how much you pay. For the community edition, it's up on our website. I won't drill down on it too much, but it's intended to be a gradual curve as you get bigger and, go approach Facebook sizes. You pay us more money. Most customers like. They're happy to pay when they are making money themselves. Support, we offer web support 24/7, emergency support 24/7. We charge a premium for that, and there are active mailing lists out there that you can sign up to if you're not on the GemTalk Systems list server. And part 3 is our product roadmap. I love that one. We're working now on version 3.6, which will ship sometime next year, probably about a year from now. Excuse me. Our current version is 3.5, which shipped in June. And the next release we do will probably be 3.51, probably in Q4 of this year. Version 3.4 is the previous release that's being actively maintained. We're up to 3.4.4 on that, and we'll be doing a 3.4.5 at some point. That just never gets old. On the GBS side, I hope this is correct. I haven't synced it with Martin in a little while. But we have 8.4.0 out now in June. We typically do large GBS releases at the same time we do large server releases because we like them when they work together. There'll be 8.4.1 at some point, and 8.5 will coincide with the 3.6 server sometime next year. So just a brief summary of what's new in 3.5. We spent a lot of time in 3.5 kind of cloudifying GemStone, so it could be run in a hybrid cloud configuration that one of our customers is really interested in. And what that means is you have the data, the GemStone database extent still on premise, but you have a bunch of worker servers out on, say, Amazon's cloud. And you want to securely coordinate that across the internet, across firewalls, and so on. So that took a fair amount of re-architecture to really make that work well and securely. Of course, the old way of doing GemStone in terms of distribution, user ID, password logins is all still there. We have to be backward compatible. But this is what we spent a lot of time on with 3.5. We also had to do something called object filtering, which means in certain applications there are rules and laws which say that this object, typically customer identifiable data, cannot leave the enterprise. So it's illegal actually to send that object over the internet out to Amazon to be processed. And there's various safeguards that have to be put into place to make sure that doesn't happen so that the companies don't get fined. And we implemented something for that where at runtime we look at a certain attribute of certain objects and decide, no, this can't go out to the cloud, and instead of returning the object, we raise an exception. That's designed to be a fail-safe operation. The application is designed to not send those objects out anyway, but if something goes wrong, there is a fail-safe to prevent data from leaving the enterprise that is not allowed to. Also new in 3.5 is something called solo Smalltalk execution. And what that means is you can run a script in Smalltalk without a running GemStone database using Topaz, our command line interface. Dale's going to talk about this some this afternoon. But basically, you have to have a database extent sitting there, but it's not, quote, active. You are the only user. But what this lets you do is write shell scripts and so on in Smalltalk calling GemStone to do it. This little example here was done in Solo to go out and get a secure connection to Google and just basically prints out what kind of security connection you have. One more example on the next page, which is actually a shell script started with a shebang and Topaz at the top. This goes out and finds files in a directory larger than 64K and prints them out. So we're hoping that internally at least to take a lot of our Perl and shell scripts and convert them over to Smalltalk scripts over time, which do this because just like you, we'd rather write in Smalltalk than Perl or shell. So. Also new in 3.5, we added some PKI classes for managing security credentials. There's a little bit of a class hierarchy here displayed, public key, private key, certificate, and so on. These things understand some pretty basic messages right now. We'll be adding to that as we go. You can read in a cert, say, in PEM format into this object and create it, and you can write it back out to PEM format. You can ask a private key if it matches a public key and vice versa. Some basic things like that. We added the support for the latest crypto algorithms from OpenSSL, the SHA-3 stuff, some of the authenticated encryption modes, OCB, GCM, and Cha-Cha. And we added some methods to support digital signatures. So you get a message, you verify that it's signed by who you think it's signed by, and then you can trust it. We also added something called digital envelopes. This is something that you can put a bunch of data in and send it securely to another, right now probably GemStone system, that can decrypt and authenticate the envelope's contents. And this can be literally any kind of data. You can take an object, a graph, and passivate it, which is how we serialize in GemStone, to a byte array. and then put that byte array in a secure envelope and send it over the internet. The other side can open it, verify it's you, and basically reinstate the objects. Some miscellaneous things we did in memory is we removed 2 locks from the shared memory cache in GemStone and replaced them with atomic bit arrays. So this is going to remove a couple places where you can get contention in the cache for better performance. So that's 3.5. In 3.6, we're working on something called DARE, Data at Rest Encryption. And this will be an option where you can have the data in the extents and the tran logs encrypted at all times. We've had a couple of customers ask for this. We've always said we don't think it's the really best efficient way to do it. Probably a encrypted container or an encrypted Linux file system is probably going to be more performant. But there are some customers that have said, no, we need this extra level. It must be encrypted at all times while on disk. So we're adding that for 3.6. We're using XTS, which is the same scheme that TrueCrypt and VeriCrypt and some of these other BitLocker type technologies use. What that'll mean is if you turn this on is you'll have to have a private key and passphrase to start the database if your database is encrypted. Couple of short examples on creating this. Some of this code is already written, so I can talk to it a little bit. You create an encrypted database using the CopyDBF utility by providing a certificate or public key. And it takes a normal database extent. It could be a virgin one, or it could be your existing unencrypted data. It converts it into an encrypted database. And then to start the database on the second line there, you have to specify, like I said, the private key in order to start the database, or it won't start. Some other things we're thinking about in 3.6, we haven't coded this yet, but it's been requested. Things like substring index queries would be handy to do search patterns on strings that are in indexes. Also regex index queries. Something else interesting. We are still looking at native support for Faro clients as well. There are some projects going on internal to GemStone, kind of as background tests on that right now. I don't have as much to talk about on that now as I would hope to from last year, but I can say it is still moving forward, but we're not ready to show anything yet. Another thing for 3.6 we'd like to do is better instance migration. One of the pains when you have 13 billion objects is what if you add an instvar to a class and there's a billion of them? That can take an inordinate amount of time to convert all the objects from the old format to the new format. And this invariably happens with the large customers. We're going to try to make that less painful and add some tools internal to GemStone that will transform the objects from the old to the new in a more optimal and quicker way. The idea we have is we'll start multiple C threads to do a pass on the database in parallel and do a logical commit of the transaction where they all get switched from the old to the new at the end. I haven't asked the guys if they can do this yet, but that's the idea. I think they can. And we're always looking for input on what else we can add to the product or what we can do that would make customers' lives easier. And that's my talk. Any questions?